Growing up in the 90s, I was a huge wrestling fan, so much so that I became a wrestler myself.
Briefly, Benji springboard cutter, lethal injection almost.
And in the 90s there were three huge wrestling companies. There was the WWF, WCW and ECW. All three of these companies had their own video games. But in this video we're going to talk about two of my favourites and arguably two of the best wrestling games ever made. The WCW N64 games. From 1997 till 2000, AKI and THQ released 6 wrestling games. These games are still held up as a measuring stick for wrestling games. From the 6 games that AKI and THQ released, 2 of them are Japanese exclusives, Virtual Pro Wrestling 64 and Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. 2 of them are WWF games, WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy, and 2 of them are the 2 games we're going to be talking about today, WCW vs NWO World Tour and WCW NWO Revenge. So what makes these games so special? To many, it's the AKI engine. The AKI engine tries to replicate Japanese style matches. These games feature many Japanese wrestling staples, such as the ability to block. The block works by the wrestler sticking out their chest and absorbing the strike, so that they can then fire a strike straight back. The first game that AKI and THQ released was WCW vs NWO World Tour. This was released in November 1997 and is a counterpart to the Japanese exclusive Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. This game lays the foundations for all future AKI and THQ games. Released at the height of Nitro when they were beating competitors Raw every single week in the ratings for what would become an 83-week streak. For many, what would be known as the Monday Night Wars was the greatest time in professional wrestling. You had 2 awesome wrestling companies fighting against each other and both were completely different from the other. The roster is split up into 5 separate groups. You've got WCW, NWO and 3 made up groups, DOA, Independent Union. There are 24 official WCW wrestlers including everyone you would expect, such as Sting, Lex Luger, The Giant, The Steiners, Ric Flair, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio and the NWO members Hulk Hogan, The Outsiders, 6 and 19 rip-off wrestlers. These wrestlers are based on real life wrestlers and legends, for example Hannibal, who was Hayabusa, Black Ninja, who is clearly the great Sasuke, and Saladin, who is based on Abdullah the Butcher. These rip-off wrestlers were fully fleshed out in the game guide. This game features 5 different game modes. These are Exhibition, your general single match mode. This features 1v1, 2v2 tag team matches, 2v1 handicap matches, and a battle royale pitting 4 players against each other. League mode, which is a round robin style league, with up to 8 singles wrestlers or tag teams to face off against each other. Tournament mode, this is a standard knockout tournament with up to 8 singles wrestlers or tag teams. WCW vs NWO, up to a 5v5 elimination style mode, where the winner stays on. In this mode you can only pick from WCW or NWO wrestlers. The main mode in this game is the League Challenge mode. In this mode, the player picks a promotion and then chooses a wrestler from the promotion, and then will go on to wrestle every single wrestler in that promotion. You can't talk about World Tour without mentioning its Japanese exclusive counterpart, Virtual Pro Wrestling 64. This game was released less than a month after WCW vs NWO World Tour. The biggest difference between these 2 games is the massive roster that Virtual Pro Wrestling has. It has all the WCW and NWO wrestlers, along with New Japan, All Japan, Michinoku Pro, FMW, legends such as Bruiser Brody, Antonio Inoki, Terry Funk, the Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask. If you haven't seen this game, I implore you to go check it out. But today we're not here to talk about Virtual Pro Wrestling, we're here to talk about WCW vs NWO World Tour. World Tour doesn't get the praise it deserves, and I think that's purely because of the games that come after it. For example, No Mercy. Many people still hold this game up to this day as the greatest wrestling game ever created. So even though that World Tour did lay the foundations for this game, people still talk about No Mercy over it. By current day standards, this game has quite a small roster, but if you think about it at the time, WWF Warzone came out after this game, and that game had 18 official wrestlers, where this game has 24 official WCW and NWO wrestlers. One thing that I've always loved about this game is the wrestler portraits. Each wrestler has their own customised portrait on the selection screen. Graphics wise, this game is exactly what you'd expect, with a blocky N64 look. Each wrestler's likeness is pretty spot on, to be honest, except from Ric Flair. I mean, what the hell, what did they do to Ric Flair? When was Ric Flair ever 320 pounds? But except from Ric Flair, they've got everyone else down pretty spot on, to be fair. Most of the wrestlers have their trademark moves, but not all of them have their actual finishes set as their finishes. For example, Sting. From Sting, you'd expect his behind grapple finish to be a Scorpion Death Drop, but it's not, it's a German suplex. He does have the Scorpion Death Drop, but it's just a normal reverse DDT. It doesn't have any character, and it doesn't have any Sting's trademarks, such as grabbing the wrestler's hair and putting him underneath his arm. He just grabs them as a normal reverse DDT and hits them. If they added more trademark moves, then that would have been a big improvement to the game, but to be honest, it doesn't really let it down that much. Because the wrestlers still have their moves, it's just not their own trademark moves. This game is also missing ring entrances. The game will start with both wrestlers in the ring, and in true Japanese fashion will get introduced one after another. When WCW vs NWO World Tour was released, it was an awesome experience, and it still is to this day. It is the second best WCW wrestling game in my opinion. It's only beat by its successor, WCW NWO Revenge. WCW NWO Revenge was released in October 1998. This is only 11 months after WCW vs NWO World Tour. Revenge was released just as the Monday Night Wars was starting to go into Raw's favour. The game has a massive licensed roster with 63 WCW and NWO wrestlers. The wrestlers are still split into groups. These groups are NWO Hollywood, NWO Wolfpack, Raven's Flock, and then 4 WCW groups. Like World Tour, there is also 2 fictitious wrestling factions with fictitious wrestlers. Unlike World Tour, Revenge includes signature trademark moves. So now Sting's Scorpion Splash and Scorpion Death Drop are unmistakably his. Revenge also includes a very basic edit mode. The edit mode is quite simplistic, but it still serves its purpose. For example, if you wanted to rename a wrestler, or change the colour of their attire, or even put them in an NWO shirt, this is now possible. The game also now looks like the WCW that you would see on TV. Wrestlers now have pre-match authentic entrances, and pay-per-view arenas have also been included, such as Starrcade, Bash at the Beach and Halloween Havoc. Post-match features such as a replay of the finish and a scoring system like Virtual Pro Wrestling is included in Revenge. The pause menu now includes 2 new features, an on-screen animated ref and the ability to turn on and off instant replays. Revenge includes 2 new game modes. One of these is a 40-person Battle Royale, and the other is the main mode in this game, Championship Mode. This is the main mode in the game and works like the towers in Mortal Kombat, where you fight one wrestler after another until you get to the champion. The Championship Mode includes all of WCW's main title, such as the WCW World Title, United States Championship, Television Championship, Cruiserweight Championship and Tag Team Championship. Personally, I think Revenge is the best WCW game ever created. You won't find an officially licensed WCW game better than this. The game's roster is absolutely unbelievable. It has every single wrestler that you'd want to play as. Personally, the inclusion of the championship modes is a big game changer for me. This is what sets it apart from World Tour. In my eyes, World Tour didn't really have a great single player experience. It was great when you wanted to pick it up and play it with a friend, but the single player campaign wasn't great. Once you've unlocked all the wrestlers, there was not much else to do. To me, this game is near enough perfection. The only thing that could push it over the edge for me and probably make it the best AKI and THQ game is a story mode. This game doesn't include a story mode. In the opening title sequence, you see Hulk Hogan cutting a promo and you see a backstage area. If they included stuff like this in the game, then that would have been awesome. That would have set it apart from the other games. But to be honest, this game is still awesome. The roster by itself is still a reason I go back and play this game. This is the final WCW AKI THQ game in the series. After this, they went on to develop games such as WWF WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy. WWF No Mercy is arguably the greatest wrestling game ever created. Many people see it as this, and it is still held up by many to be the greatest game, and the measuring stick for all wrestling games that came after it. But to me, you can't count out the WCW games. I'm a huge WCW fan, so I may be quite biased, but without these games, you wouldn't have No Mercy.
Hey Jack, if you enjoyed this video, then give it a like and subscribe to my channel. And tell all your jabroni friends to subscribe to Super Benji's channel. Cause what you gonna do? What you gonna do, Jack? When Hollywood Benji runs wild on YouTube.